question. We're here.
What, if anything, do you, as a man, have in common with the character of Leatherface?
Extreme handsomeness.
That's it. I don't know if you heard that. What does each of us as a man have in common with the character of Leatherface?
Sadistic impulses. I know you don't have those, Leonard.
Oh, I do. I do. Maybe that is. Of course I do. What do you think?
Hunger.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing I found in myself in playing the role that really I think it came from me more than the character was that when you're trying to get at a screaming girl with a chainsaw, the screaming actually makes you want to kill her more. And I think that's just basic manliness. It's kind of universal.
Yes, right here.
Is it true that the serial killer Ed Gein was an inspiration for the character of Leatherface?
Was Ed Gein a motive or an inspiration? Minimally. I know a lot of people think that this, and you see it all the time, the movies that are based on Ed Gein's life, and they always show Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lamb when it's actually the other guy who's based on Gein. Leatherface is not based on Ed Gein. This is directly from Tobe Hooper, the director, and Kim Henkel, the writer, who wrote the script together. This is I was sitting with them one night while we were waiting for a setup, and I asked them how they came up with this. And Tobe said that Ed Gein inspired the masks and the bone furniture. Everything else, he said, we made up. We put everything that had ever scared us in a movie into one movie. So I think it's really unfair to Ed Gein and to Leatherface that people continue to build this idea that there's this really close correspondence between the two. Because I don't really think there is. Ed Gein had a mother. Let's say he apparently loved his mother, but you know.
And he was a well-regarded babysitter.
He was.
Yeah, he was like the neighborhood guy who would babysit for people. He was apparently really a sweet guy, except for that one little.
Let's get someone from the back. Go ahead. Yes.
Do each of you have a particular favorite film of the franchise?
A favorite film from the franchise? The one you're in.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Mine.
I think here's a question. Does each of us have a favorite non-Texas Chainsaw Massacre horror movie?
Oh, that's a great question.
And I'll answer that really quickly. Mine is The Haunting, the original one, 1961. So,
If this is considered a horror movie, then this is the one, Silence of the Lambs. I really think that.
I can tell you in chronological order, the three that scared the shit out of me. Believe it or not, the original Invaders from Mars from 19 whatever. On a 19-inch black and white TV when I was 5 or 6 years old. Scared the shit out of me. Second movie, Night of the Living Dead. Because I watched it about 80 miles north of Pittsburgh, and I kept looking down the aisle for them zombies to come in. And the third one, believe it or not, even though we're not supposed to use Texas Chainsaw, was number 1.
Well, if I can name my top probably be the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nosferatu, and it's always a toss-up, I guess, between The Exorcist and The Shining.
Let's go all the way in the back, right in the back. Yep, you. Yep, stand up just so we can hear you.
Speak loud.
If the franchise was called Head Cheese as opposed to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, would it have been as successful?
No. The title sold the movie. I mean, it's the title, I shouldn't put it that way, the title brought the audience into the theater, and then the movie sold the movie. But if it had been Head Cheese, nobody would have come. I really believe that. And of course, the working title when we were filming was Leatherface. So I was bitterly disappointed that I was no longer the title character, and then they put this sleazy exploitation title on my movie. So, but yeah, it made the movie, absolutely.
I think also the opening that's red, you know, that you see on the screen. I think that really, I mean, as a kid, how many people thought that was real? You could go, I'm not going to Texas, that's real. You know? And I'm sure you still get that question today, like, hey, was that a real story?
Oh, I get it all the time. You know, first they killed John Kennedy, now this. Oh yeah. I mean, I've had people this weekend ask me about this. You can ask me questions based on the assumption that it was a real story. And so yeah, I mean, this is deeply embedded in the public consciousness that it was.
Now let me ask a question down the line now. It's going to kind of exclude you because you were the original. So Bill, was there pressure on you after seeing, because by that point, it had started to build some momentum and people, you know, it had kind of broken out of the underground and it had done some theater and VHSs had kind of hit and you know, you had kind of something coming about where now part 2 was in because you guys had Dennis Hopper in it. And what was the pressure, and then we'll go right down the line, like each one has to feel a certain amount of pressure to portray a character like that, to really bring forth the best possible performance that you could.
Pressure. Well, I knew there was no way to try to follow Gunnar, because that was a done deal. It wasn't going to get any better than that. That was as good as it will ever get. You know, there's no Last Supper 2 or Mona Lisa, The Next Generation. So I just worked it from an alternate universe. And then I had done a number of, most of my time had been in the theater, almost extensively all of it. And I had created a number of roles in original plays, so it was like that. And so it was a lot of fun and a big challenge to get into it. And fortunately, Toby was very collaborative. The writer, Kit Carson, who doesn't get anywhere near enough credit for the fantastic screenplay he put together. And so we created a new play, and it happened to be in front of a camera that Toby knew what to do with. And he did a lot of coaching off camera for me. You don't hear it because they cut it out. He did a lot of side coaching, and it really made a substantive difference. So that was a glorious pressure. And then working with Bill Moseley, I just kind of fed off of his insanity. He was riding with the angels that entire 10 weeks. He was impervious to anything except more work. So I was really glad of that.
Do I look like a guy that feels pressure from anything? No. Here's the deal. The hardest part about acting, the hardest part is getting the job. Once you get the job, things are cool. And, you know, you trust the people you work with, you trust the director, you trust the writer, you follow, you know, what's on the page. If the writer's good, he's good, you trust the writer's good, you trust the director's good, you know you're good, you bring your A game every time you come to work and let it happen. And, you know, and that's the way it is. I had something else to say, but I forgot.
The only note I really got before we started the movie was they wanted, you know, Leatherface to be the great white shark, the lethal killing machine. When he's on, he needs to be larger than life. And my only goal as an actor was that people would actually believe the character I played was the same individual that Gunnar had played, because that's the way the script was written. They are the same human being. And so I've admitted this before, I ripped off Gunnar Hansen as completely as I could, and then ran that character through the filter of what happened to him since they completed that part of the story. And he went through some profound changes, so there were plenty of creative opportunities with the character. He's matured in the way that Leatherface matures. But yeah, the pressure was always merely just to keep him lethal, keep him the killer, you know, never let him be too nice.
Okay. Go in the back. Yep.
When you first read the script or heard about the character at all, what was your first reaction to how messed up the character was?
You probably should take that, Gunnar.
Well, my first reaction was Leatherface whinnies like a horse and squeals like a pig, and I thought, well, I got the horse whinny covered, but how am I ever going to squeal like a pig? So that was actually what I worried about, was creating that noise. And I never cared that the character was screwed up. I mean, maybe because I had played, you know, Mice and Men, and I'd been Lenny, you know, and so to me, in some ways, doing Leatherface was like doing Lenny, except I had no lines, you know, and I didn't have a face, but the character was similar in a way for me. So I never thought about, it was only when we were making the movie, and then afterwards, when I started watching it, that I started really thinking about what a really screwed up family this is, and what really screwed up people they are, Leatherface included. At the time, I think I was just thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And I never reacted to, people have asked me over the years, wasn't it hard psychologically to play a character like that? And my answer has always been no, because I was never the character. And in fact, I never even worried about that part. I didn't worry about the implications of the character. I only worried about how was I going to do the job, you know? And I mean that in a very superficial way. How am I going to make this point in this scene? And that's how, you know, how am I going to do this in this scene? And I never really worried about the fact that I was playing a profoundly disturbed and retarded, deeply retarded. I hesitate only because of political correctness. But those issues never weren't, I mean, it was strictly how do I represent him physically.
Next question. Somebody was here in the front. Yes, go ahead.
Any of you ever got hurt while working on the Leatherface movie?
Any injuries?
Any
Yeah, that's
injuries?
a good one.
Injuries during the shooting. Well, I had pneumonia for a week. Worst case of walking pneumonia the doctor's ever seen. Oh, that wasn't too shabby. Taking meds every 2 hours. Living over a vaporizer of steam. Unfortunately. And, yeah, that was the only real injury I got. My stunt double, Bob Elmore, he had a lot of injuries. And he took a lot of years off the back end of his life doing that. kudos to him.
Yeah, Gunnar probably had the most severe injury when you cut your leg, or acted like you were cutting your leg. Didn't that hurt like hell?
It's called method. No, I think, you know, in Chainsaw, the original Chainsaw, everybody get hurt. And as Bill Vale commented to me, which then I looked back and thought about it, was true. When they did a lot of takes of one scene, if one of the characters is injured during that take, that's the take they used. But I got knocked out in one scene. And there's no footage of it, sadly. It's the scene where Leatherface grabs Pam on the front porch and then runs down the hall with her. And I didn't clear the door because they had a false floor, so that the doorway was only about, they had a false floor and a ramp. And so the top of the door frame, or the bottom of the door frame, was really only about 6'3". And I'm 6'4", and I was wearing 3-inch heels. And I couldn't see out of the mask except for what was directly in front of me. So we did a walkthrough just to get all the camera blocking and get everything working and make sure it worked. And then we were using a double for that, as far as for Pam. And so then we wanted to do it full speed to make sure that it all worked at full speed as far as the camera movement and everything. And there was no film in the camera because this was just a technical. And so I did it at full speed, and when I carried her through the first walkthrough, I was hunched over because I didn't really want to bear the weight. So I was letting her weight sort of punch me over and we walked through it. But when we did it full speed, I had to do it the way we were going to do it, which was standing up, full standing up, and leaning back to hold her up. And I just didn't clear the door, and I came running down the hall and cracked my head on the door, and it knocked me out cold. And it was Bob Burns' girlfriend who was the double. She thought I was dead. She said she heard this loud crack when I hit, and I was just lying on my back, and she thought I was dead. And then when I opened my eyes, Toby was peering down into the mask, looking to see if I was dead, and said, "Okay, we'll take a break." And I said, "No, I'm okay, let's do it," which was insanity, but we got up and we shot it. Or actually did shoot it, but I always regretted the fact that that was not being filmed, because that would be a wonderful extras reel piece. But so that was probably the worst thing that happened to me. I got burned when we were doing the chainsaw. When Leatherface falls and cuts his leg, they didn't know how they were going to do the trick. And I was starting to get really worried, and finally they explained how they were going to do it, and they were going to have when we did the close-up of the chainsaw cutting my leg, they were going to have a crew member running the saw. And I said, "No, I'm running the saw. It's my leg." So Toby relented, and it cut through so fast and went through the meat that they had taped to my leg and everything that it actually burned my leg when it hit the sheet metal. So for an instant I thought I'd been cut, and then I yelled and slapped my hand over the cut, and blood spurted out because there was blood left in the blood bag. And for that instant, I thought, I'm crippled for life. But it turned out suddenly the pain was gone. So then I realized what had gone on. There was just a little red mark on my leg from where it burned. But the knockout was the only thing. Everybody else, Marilyn, that was brutal for Marilyn. They'd have her jump out the window, and the window is like 3 feet at the most, the window ledge to the ground. So they had the stunt double do that jump. They wouldn't let Marilyn do it. Then they put her on a 6-foot scaffolding to make the jump for the landing. And she sprained her ankle, which is why at the end of the movie, when she's being chased by the hitchhiker, she's hobbling. It's because she can barely move. And that's why the hitchhiker, if you watch him, he's kind of dancing. And the reason is he's trying to use up time. And so he's dancing back and forth this way because he knows if he walked fast, he'd run over her. So he's trying to cover the fact that she can barely move. In the scene where Sally jumps out the second floor window, the stunt woman jumped out the window and fell 4 feet into a mattress that was all set up on the second floor. But for Marilyn's landing, Marilyn had to do the landing. So they hung her, they grabbed her and hung her from the roof with their hands. And that was an old 10-foot ceiling house. And in the back, the floor was 4 feet off the ground, so she's 14 feet up, plus dangling. So she has about an 8-foot fall, 9-foot fall, 8-foot fall, and they just dropped her. You know, boom. Did you get that? And it, you know, and it was just like, why don't you just have her? Oh, I don't know, jump off a 2-foot catwalk. So Marilyn probably got the worst. She was constantly injured from shooting the movie.
And I found out even if they beat you with a fake pipe, which is just a steel rod, you know, coated with rubber that looks like a lead pipe, if they do that for 14 hours, it leaves a mark, a big mark.
We're going to take one more question. Let's see, who has a good one? Raise your hand if you got a really good one. All right, I'm going to go right here to this young lady. I can't see. Yep. Oh, there we go, right there.
Each one of you has your own signature move with the saws. How is it handling the saws?
How was it handled in the shop?
No, how is it handling the saw? You know, you have the.
Oh.
Everyone has their own type of, you know, signature shot. How is it handling the saw? And more importantly, what did the saws weigh? Like they varied in weight, some of them, correct?
I have no idea what mine weighed. It probably weighed 15 pounds, 20 pounds at the most. It never seemed to weigh anything to me. Partly because I had a friend who was a heavy weightlifter, and he had decided that he was going to transform my life by getting into weight. So I had actually, even though you can't tell, you know, in the movie because I'm just a fat guy in the movie, but I actually had been lifting weights for several months, so well before this movie came out. So the chainsaw never seemed to weigh anything to me, and I could run all night long with the saw, and it wasn't the saw that tired me out. When I put Pam on the hook, she never seemed to weigh anything to me. So I had no problem handling the saw. I mean, it was fine. Partly that was my ignorance. I had never used a saw, and that was a live saw. And it was only later when I moved to New England and started heating my house with wood that I realized how incredibly dangerous a live saw is, and how easily I could have killed Marilyn, and how easily I could have killed and should have killed Bill Bale.
Or hurt yourself.
Yeah, but especially Bill Bale, because Bill is, you know, supposedly dead, and he's laid out on the table in the kitchen, and Pam is hanging on the hook, and Gunner was. He starts up the saw and cuts off his head, Bill's head. Well, it's a live saw, it's a fully functioning saw, it's got a teeth on the chain, and I'm cutting into the table 3 inches from his head. If the saw had bucked, it would have killed him. And what I told Bill was, don't move, we'll be fine. One of the greatest statements of ignorance ever made. It's like, look, Mom, look at this. So anyway, I don't